2020, I'm called to the Economic Offence Wing, Delhi Police. The inspector slides the document across the table. It reads FIR, First Information Report number 180 oblique 2020. I grab the document, start looking at the list of accused. I'm listed as the alleged accused number 10. There were almost 213 lawsuits on similar lines pan India. You must be wondering, what did you do? Well, I was managing director of a project management company which was working on behalf of a UK based real estate developer. We had delivered 8,000 homes and 2,300 homes were yet to be delivered. The company collapsed. But here's the thing, I was not even a director, I was not a shareholder. So, by no means, I was the owner of the company. The company was owned by private equity funds, and all the control of funds and all decisions were taken in London by the private equity boys sitting 7,000 miles away. So you must be wondering, why was I the alleged accused number 10? Well, because I was visible. I was on TV, I was on newspapers, industry conferences, industry awards. I had great PR. So tell me, the biggest issue I think I also did was I never corrected anybody when people assumed that I was in control. That feeling never came in. People used to assume I was the owner and I did not bother to correct them. So, anyways, I did the same thing. I let the world believe something which was not really true. I was not dishonest. It's just that I did not want to, lose the feeling that people respect me, they command me because they assume I control everything. So this isn't a story about 1,000 crore company or a real estate or a corporate India. This is about what happens when you choose looking good over being honest. The pattern is same. You might be 20 or you might be 50. It's just that the stakes are different. Because the crisis you don't see coming is the one you're creating right now. So let me step back. 2013, I was head of projects. We had just launched the one of the biggest projects in Gurgaon. It's even now its biggest project, 70 acres spread across 6 phases. The markets were booming. We had tremendous response, almost 300 odd bookings in a month. Our collections just for March 2013 were rupees 100 crores. 100 crores in the bank just in 1 month. The entire team was celebrating. The company did not have an Indian promoter. It was run by fund managers in London. They were private equity, very sophisticated, very impressive, and the credentials were very strong. We also had the so-called industry stalwarts, on our board from finance, people with incredible pedigrees, former investment bankers, and CFOs who came in from various multinationals. I thought these people knew what they were doing. They are the experts. So one day, a junior finance executive walks into my room. He says, "Sir, why are we paying 80 crores in income tax? Why don't we conserve money? What will happen if the markets go down and the clients don't pay up money? How will we do the construction? 80 crores in tax payment? Well, we would get about 2,000 crores in the customer receivable basis what we have sold, money that families would give us ultimately. And we were paying 80 crores not to build apartments. We were paying 80 crores to the income tax to build a balance sheet." My response to the guy, "Don't worry, just do what the finance wizards say. They know their job." I heard what he was saying. The money was going to build a balance sheet versus actually doing construction. But, questioning it would meant that I would look like probably somebody who doesn't understand sophisticated financial engineering. I would maybe look weak in front of people with better credentials than mine. So I told him, just do what the smart people have said. So, the whole point is I didn't want to question anybody because questioning anybody feels stupid. So, like if you have a project, there's this smart guy in your project who, is like a topper, and whatever he says, the professor's not. He says something while you're in the project, you are the project lead. But you don't want to ask him because maybe asking him will make you look stupid, will make you look inferior in front of him. So, what you do is you just keep quiet and you agree and you say, yes, this everybody trusts this guy, so let me not question him. People may start thinking I am inferior. So that's what I did. I trusted credentials of others over my gut. You've been in group meetings. So you know what happens in classes? Do you guys use Excel? Okay, so sometimes what happens is you have these smart guys, the very ultra smart guys in classes, I would say now. So they would make this Excel which has a lot of tabs and a lot of formulas, and it looks like really high tech. And you don't really understand what he's saying, but you say, yes, very good. This is absolutely right. Whatever result he's doing is absolutely right. Same thing happened with me. The financial so called wizards used to come, they would present such sophisticated and fancy graphs, and in the board meeting, I would just keep quiet because I thought, no, I can't challenge. This is looking so nice. It's so fancy. I'm sure they know their job. Let me not open my mouth, not even ask a basic question, where is the money for construction? Because it'll make me look very, very stupid. So I trusted that. So that's a lesson. Whenever you see those fancy Excels, please remember that. Now, here's what I didn't see. The money was being managed by the experts in London. I was the visible face in India, still on TV, meeting customers, doing PR, but I did not control a single rupee. Now, that's what you call visibility without control. That's my key subject today, what I wanted to talk. A lot of us, like myself, I landed in a situation where I had all the visibility, but I didn't have any control. You're listed probably as a team lead. If you're not doing projects, you'll probably end up doing projects somewhere. So you're listed as a team lead of your final year project. You do all the presentations, you talk to the professors, your name is first on the list. But there is this smart guy in your team who writes the code. He does the actual work. He actually understands what you're presenting. When it works, everyone congratulates you. But if it doesn't work, everybody blames you. That's the most dangerous position in any organization, because when things go well, everyone assumes you're in charge. And when things collapse, everyone assumes you're responsible. So coming back to my situation, it was 2017-18. The real estate markets had been in a slump since mid 2013, I would say. And gradually the funding stopped. The receivables and the so-called fundings, it slowed down, it finally stopped. First thing, the fund managers went back to London, deserting the Indian operations and playing the blame game. Gradually, the money we were expecting completely vanishes. Construction slows, finally it stops. We'd already delivered 8,000 homes successfully, thousands of families living in them, but the 2,300 were still waiting. What about the 2,000 crores? But you know what? The numbers don't cry. Families cry. And I'm still on TV at conferences, still being introduced as the man who delivered 8,000 homes. And, here I am. Every night I used to think, tomorrow I will speak up. And in the morning, silence. I should have resigned. I should have said publicly, I don't control the funds. I don't have the ability to deliver what I promised. I'm leaving. But I didn't. Because being face of success felt so good to risk. I didn't want to risk it. The project is failing, once you guys get into project, you realize this, it's failing. Your part isn't done. The code doesn't work. The research is incomplete. But you're still on LinkedIn and you're writing, leading an amazing team. You're still showing up to class. Behind would mean looking incompetent, losing faith in front of your peers, admitting that you oversold your abilities. So you stay visible and hope somehow it works out. So then the lawsuit started. There was one lawsuit, then there were 10, then there were 50. Finally, my name was in about 213 civil lawsuits, 11 FIRs pan India. Don't mention the EDs and all that. So, yeah, I've been everywhere. And that didn't break me. What used to really break me was customers would come up to me. They would open their phone. They would Google, show my picture and tell me, sir, we booked because of you. We had faith in you. And they were right. If we delivered 8,000 homes, why not their 2,300? But because I was visible on TV, because the people who controlled the money weren't people customers saw, and when it all collapsed, the fund managers London went back to London and said, we don't know what happened in India. The industry stalwarts, the so-called, guys with very, very impressive pedigrees, suddenly became mere consultants. They even stopped coming to office. The people who actually controlled the money claimed they had no control. The person who had no control over the money, me, became the alleged accused number 10. Your version of this, when your group project fails, the smart guy will say, I just did the technical part. I wasn't the team lead. The senior who told you what to do, he would say, I just gave suggestions. You were in charge. And you, the one who was visible, who did the presentations, who everyone remembers, you are the one left explaining to the professor why it failed. Not because you lied, but because you let people believe you were someone you weren't. Someone who could deliver, someone who controlled the outcome. That's not fraud, but it's not honesty either. And that's what the cost you pay, not the failed project, not the missed deadline. The trust breaks. They remember what they believed about you and what you let them believe. So here's what I learned from surviving the 213 suits. I think the bigger learning happened from the causing the suits rather than surviving. Surviving is okay, we can talk some other day. Self-deception doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small moments when we choose comfort over clarity. It happens every time we say, trust the experts instead of this doesn't make sense. It happens every time we accept credit for things we can't actually do. After the collapse, something unexpected happened. The real estate regulatory bodies, HRERA, Haryana RERA and UP RERA, they needed someone to complete the stalled projects because the customers were chasing them. They appointed me. The same families who sued me didn't object to my appointment because they knew something I had forgotten. The person who fails honestly is more valuable than the person who succeeds by hiding the truth. They knew I understood the projects. I'd built 8,000 homes. They knew I'd faced them. I won't run away to London. They knew. This is what you need to understand before your first job, before your first promotion, before you become the face of something. Honesty survives. The professor who catches you admitting, I didn't understand this section, will respect you more than the student who nods and then fails. Your manager who sees you ask for help for everything is likely to recommend a promotion for you compared to an intern who just says, I'll do it, and finally delivers garbage. The teammate who trusts you to be honest will work with you again. The one you let down won't. So now I run a crisis management practice. I only work where I have both visibility and control. The first question I ask clients, every executive, every founder is question one, where are you visible without control? Who's taking credit of something they didn't do? Who's nodding in meetings while having no idea what's happening? The junior finance executive warning about 80 crores in tax. The fact that you don't control what you're visible for. The truth that would make you look less important. What you're not saying in your group chat, at least you have group chats, right? So in the group chats, you say something which will make you look weak. So you keep quiet in the group chat. What you're not admitting to your professor just because you don't want to look unprepared. What you're not telling your manager, this is something you'll experience when you start jobs because you don't want to lose the opportunity. The unsaid thing. Now that's your blind spot. And blind spots don't announce themselves with alarm bells. When your teammate quits, your first performance review says, doesn't ask for help. Or when you're like me, 50 years old in a police station, looking at 213 lawsuits. I told you this wasn't a success story. It's a confession. I let people believe I was more in control than I was. I dismissed mornings that would make me look weak. I stayed visible long after I had lost the ability to deliver. And when it all collapsed, I was the face they remembered. So here's what I want you to do. Do you guys have phones? You're allowed phones in college? Please pull out your phones and start writing a text. So I want you to start writing a text of things, projects, something where you've overcommitted or something you have not asked questions, you didn't understand, but you still kept quiet. And there must be so many moments in group chats where you would have said, I got this, but when you didn't. Now, don't send that message for me. It's not for me. It's for you. You guys need that message, not me. Tomorrow, in your next meeting, your next class, your next group chat, say it out loud. I don't actually know how to do this. I need help. I don't understand. Can you explain? I didn't lead this project. I just contributed. That's how you break the cycle. Because in 6 months, 6 years, maybe 10 years, you will be standing in your version of those 2,300 families. It could be a failed startup. It could be a job you just got fired from. It could be a team which doesn't trust you anymore. And someone will ask, how did no one see this coming? And you'll remember this moment when you saw it and chose to admit it. Thank you.
Very